The Princess and the Impossible Standard. The grand halls of HFY's royal palace shone with an eerie blue glow, its towering crystalline walls reflecting the countless stars of the universe. Across the galaxy, powerful leaders, warriors, and noblemen gathered, all with one goal: to win the heart of Princess Syra. She was the most desired woman in the universe, her beauty unmatched, her intelligence sharp, and her power unquestionable. But there was one problem. She rejected every single suitor. For years, kings, warlords, and champions from different planets came forward, offering their strength, wealth, and devotion. And every time, she refused. Some called her cold-hearted, others whispered that she was waiting for someone special. But now, the Emperor of HFY had grown impatient. Standing tall before the royal court, his voice boomed across the great hall. This time, a suitor must be chosen. The trials shall begin again. Gasps filled the room. The trials of HFY were legendary, a series of deadly tests that only the most worthy could survive. But it wasn't the trials that shocked the audience. It was what the Emperor said next. And this time, humans may enter. Silence. Then, murmurs of disbelief. Humans, weak, primitive creatures from a tiny blue planet called Earth. They were nothing compared to the towering warriors of the Zephyrian Empire or the telepathic elites of the Scar Dominion. And yet, one name was chosen: a human among gods. On a distant space station near Andromeda 4, Captain Ray Carter leaned against his ship, sipping a cheap energy drink, completely unaware that his life was about to change. He wasn't a prince. He wasn't a warrior. He was just an explorer, a man who had spent years mapping the cold, empty void of space. He had seen dying stars, forgotten planets, and alien ruins lost to time, but never had he imagined that his name would be selected for a royal trial. When the message came, he laughed. This has to be a mistake. But it wasn't. A Zephyrian official stood before him, his silver robes glowing under the station's artificial lights. His expression was unreadable. "You have been chosen, human. You will come with us to HFY." Ray frowned. "And if I refuse?" The official's response was simple: refusal is not an option. The arrival. 2 days later, Ray Carter stood among giants. The royal arena was filled with the most powerful and ruthless beings in the galaxy, warlords covered in battle scars, princes wielding swords that shimmered with energy, cyborg warriors with glowing red eyes. And then there was him, a human in a dusty leather jacket. He could hear them laughing. He didn't belong here, and they all knew it. From her throne above, Princess Syra watched. Her silver eyes, cold as the void of space, studied each suitor carefully. She did not react. She did not speak. But when her gaze passed over Ray, something flickered in her expression: curiosity. The Emperor stood, raising his hand to silence the crowd. "The trials shall begin. Only the strongest, the smartest, and the most worthy will stand before the princess." Ray sighed. He wasn't here to impress anyone. He had no interest in marrying an alien princess. But something about this challenge felt different. Maybe it was the mystery of Syra's rejections. Maybe it was the thrill of the unknown. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the feeling that something much bigger was about to happen, and he was at the center of it. The suspense begins. As the first trial was announced, Ray took a deep breath. A battle of strength, skill, and survival awaited. And in the shadows, a dangerous enemy was already plotting to eliminate him before the game even began. The trials of the chosen ones. The arena of HFY was a coliseum of nightmares. Towering obsidian walls surrounded a battlefield so vast that one could easily mistake it for a planet's surface. Alien moons hung in the sky above, casting eerie shadows over the warriors gathered below. The trials were about to begin. Ray Carter stood among the most powerful beings in the galaxy, his heart pounding. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was a human among gods, a nobody in a game where legends were made. Yet here he was. Across the arena, warriors towered over him. Battle-hardened giants with glowing eyes, armored beings with cybernetic enhancements, and telepathic assassins who could kill with just a thought. They were all here for one reason: to win the heart of Princess Syra. And standing high above, in a throne of shimmering energy, was the princess herself. Rey's gaze flickered toward her. Cold, emotionless, unreadable. She was watching, waiting to see who would survive. But why? That was the question no one could answer. Why did she reject every suitor before this? What was she looking for? Rey had no idea. What he did know, however, was that if he didn't survive these trials, he'd never find out. The first trial, the Arena of Beasts. The Emperor of HFY stood from his throne. His voice boomed across the arena like a thunderstorm in space. The first trial begins now. A deep rumble echoed beneath the ground. The warriors stiffened. The air grew thick with tension. And then, the ground split open. From the depths below, monstrous creatures emerged. Snarling beasts with metallic exoskeletons, razor-sharp tails, and multiple glowing red eyes. Their claws could... The next trial. A battle of minds. That night, in the royal chambers, Princess Syra stood by a massive window overlooking the stars. Her thoughts were clouded. She had seen thousands of warriors fight before, but Rey Carter was different. He had no weapons, no armor, and yet he had survived. He had used his mind instead of his strength. For the first time in her life, Syra felt something she didn't understand. Curiosity. What made this human so different? And why, for the first time, did she not know who would win? The second trial would begin at dawn. And this time, it wouldn't be about strength or combat. It would be about something far more dangerous. The mind. The warlord's betrayal. The aftermath of the maze. The second trial was over. 4 warriors remained. Rey Carter stood among them, exhausted but victorious. The maze of illusions had tested his mind, forcing him to face his greatest fears, his deepest regrets, and his own identity. But somehow he had survived. Now, as he stood outside the maze, he could still feel its lingering effects. The way it made him doubt reality, the way it played with his emotions. And yet, something else troubled him more. Princess Syra had smiled at him. It had been brief, so brief that no one else seemed to notice. But Rey had. And he had no idea what it meant. The crowd roared with excitement as the survivors stood before the Emperor. Prince Kaler, the telepath. General Vakros, the warlord. Lady Threxia, the cybernetic huntress. And Rey Carter, the human. The Emperor's gaze swept over them. His expression was unreadable, but his golden eyes lingered on Rey for a second too long. He wasn't happy. Rey wasn't supposed to be here. 4 remain, the Emperor announced, his voice echoing through the royal halls. But only one will stand as worthy. The crowd cheered. The final trial would soon be revealed. But Rey wasn't focused on that. His instincts told him something was wrong. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw something move, a shadow in the darkness of the palace halls. And then, a sharp, burning pain tore through his side. The assassination attempt. Rey stumbled, his breath catching as he looked down. A thin energy dagger had pierced his side. Not deep enough to kill him, just enough to disable him. He turned his head. A figure in black armor, a Zyphorian assassin, and standing beside him, General Vakros. The warlord's face twisted into a cruel smirk. "You've lasted longer than I expected, human," Vakros said. "But your journey ends here." Rey gritted his teeth. His vision blurred as the energy from the dagger spread through his body like fire in his veins. Vakros stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think you're special. You think the princess actually cares about you." He let out a low laugh. "You are nothing but a joke. A toy she will discard when the trials are over." Ray forced himself to stand, clutching his side. He couldn't pass out. Not here. I don't care about the princess, Ray muttered. Vakros raised an eyebrow. No. Ray smirked, despite the pain. I just don't like losing to bastards like you. Vakros' smirk faded. Then, in an instant, he struck again. Ray barely dodged, rolling to the side as the assassin lunged forward with another blade. His body screamed in pain, but he forced himself to move. This wasn't a fair fight. This was an execution, and the only way to survive was to turn the tables. The unexpected savior. Just as Vakros signaled for the assassin to finish the job, something unexpected happened. A bright pulse of energy shot through the air, striking the assassin directly in the chest. The figure collapsed, his body convulsing from the shock. Vakros whirled around, furious. And there she was. Princess Syra. She stood at the entrance of the hall, her silver eyes cold and unyielding. In her hand, she held a small pulse weapon, still humming from the blast. For the first time, her voice held anger. What are you doing, Vakros? Vakros took a step back, but quickly masked his surprise. Your Highness, this human is still a competitor in the trials. Her gaze flickered to Ray, who was struggling to stay on his feet. His entire body ached, but he managed to give her a half smirk. Appreciate the assist, Ray muttered. Syra ignored him. Instead, she stepped toward Vakros, her expression unreadable. I will not tolerate dishonor in my trials. Vakros narrowed his eyes. I was simply ensuring that an unworthy candidate. Syra cut him off. This trial is mine, not yours. Her voice was sharp as a blade. The warlord stiffened, clenching his fists. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, Vakros took a step back. He knew better than to challenge a royal decree. But Ray saw the rage burning in his eyes. This wasn't over. The confrontation. As soon as Vakros left, Syra turned to Ray. You should be dead, she said bluntly. Ray coughed. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Syra didn't react. Instead, she studied him closely, as if trying to understand something. Why didn't you fight back? She finally asked. Ray raised an eyebrow. You think I wanted to get stabbed? Syra tilted her head slightly. You are different. Ray rolled his eyes. I get that a lot. But Syra didn't smile. Her expression remained serious. You didn't kill in the maze. You didn't fight Vakros here. Every other competitor would have tried to eliminate their rival. But you. She hesitated. You refused to play the game. Ray sighed. Maybe I just don't like the rules. There was a brief silence between them. Then, to Ray's surprise, Syra stepped closer. Perhaps that is why you are still here. For a moment, Ray thought she might say something more. But before she could, a voice boomed across the halls. The Emperor. The final trial begins. Now. The final trial. The Orb of Truth. The surviving warriors were summoned to the Grand Arena one last time. In the center of the battlefield stood a massive glowing sphere, floating several feet in the air. It pulsed with raw energy, ancient and powerful. The Emperor stood tall, his gaze piercing. This, he declared, is the Orb of Truth. The crowd fell silent. The Emperor continued. To be worthy of my daughter's hand, you must prove not just your strength, but your truth. This orb will reveal the deepest parts of your soul, your intentions, your secrets, your destiny. Ray's stomach dropped. This wasn't a fight. This was something much worse. Because Ray Carter had a past full of regrets, and if the Orb of Truth exposed them, he might not walk away from this trial alive. The forbidden choice. The Orb of Truth. The Grand Arena of HFY was silent. Thousands of spectators watched in anticipation as the final four warriors stood before the massive, floating Orb of Truth. It pulsed with ancient energy, its core swirling with light as if it held the weight of the universe itself. Ray Carter could feel the energy buzzing in the air. It wasn't just a test. This was a judgment. The Emperor of HFY, standing above them on his throne, spoke with authority. The orb of truth does not lie. It does not deceive. It does not bow to power, nor does it show mercy to the weak. His golden eyes swept over the finalists. Step forward. Let the truth of your soul be revealed. Ray swallowed hard. This wasn't just about proving worthiness. This was about exposing everything. And he wasn't sure he wanted his truth to be seen. Vakros goes first. General Vakros stepped forward first, confidence radiating off him. The crowd cheered, his supporters chanting his name. The moment he placed his massive hand on the glowing orb, the entire stadium was bathed in a deep red light. Images flashed across the surface of the orb, scenes of battle, of blood, of conquest. Vakros had fought in 100 wars, crushing civilizations, burning planets, enslaving weaker races. He smiled at the visions. He was proud of them. The orb pulsed once more, and then a final image appeared. A golden throne, a crown upon his head. Vakros saw himself ruling HFY. The Emperor's expression darkened. This trial was meant to prove the suitor's loyalty to the royal family. But Vakros' truth showed his own hunger for power. Princess Xyra's face remained unreadable. Vakros stepped back, unfazed. He had shown his truth, and he didn't care if they feared it. Kaler's truth. Prince Kaler, the telepath, moved next. As he touched the orb, it shimmered with a soft blue glow. Images formed. A young prince, training under wise mentors, learning the ways of diplomacy, of ruling through knowledge rather than war. His visions were of peace, of alliances between species, of a galaxy free of conflict. Escape from HFY. The moment everything changed. The royal arena of HFY had been a place of glory, where the greatest warriors of the galaxy had battled for the honor of ruling beside Princess Xyra. Now, it was a battleground of betrayal. Ray Carter didn't need to be a strategist to know they were about to die. The Emperor's order still echoed through the air. Kill them both. Guards rushed forward, energy spears crackling with deadly force. The crowd was in chaos, some shouting in disbelief, others cheering for blood. Ray had seen bad situations before, but this was the worst. Princess Xyra, who had been calm and unreadable throughout the entire trial, now had a fire in her eyes. She grabbed Ray's wrist and whispered, "Follow me." Now, Ray didn't argue, because running for his life with an alien princess, yeah, that was definitely the most Ray Carter thing ever. The descent into the underbelly. Xyra moved fast, pulling Ray through a hidden exit behind the throne. They burst into a long metallic corridor, lit by flickering blue lights. The sounds of shouting guards echoed behind them. The Emperor had unleashed his entire army. Ray ran beside her, clutching his wounded side. "You know, I kinda thought royal trials weren't supposed to end in assassination attempts." Xyra didn't look back. "My father has chosen tradition over truth. He sees you as a threat." Ray laughed breathlessly. "Me? I'm not a threat. I don't even have a weapon." Xyra glanced at him. "Exactly." Ray's grin faded. Oh, the Emperor wasn't afraid of him because he was powerful. He was afraid because he was different. Because he had proven that the old ways were wrong. And Xyra had seen it too. They turned a sharp corner and suddenly, a wall of armored guards blocked their path. Ray skidded to a stop. "Well, that's unfortunate." Xyra didn't hesitate. She lifted her hands, and before Ray could react, a pulse of blue energy exploded from her palms, sending the guards flying. Ray stared. "So, you're secretly a space wizard." Xyra smirked. "You expected less from a princess." Ray made a mental note. Do not make Xyra mad. They pressed on, racing deeper into the palace's underbelly. The betrayal runs deeper. As they reached a hidden docking bay, an old man stood waiting. He wore a long silver robe, his face lined with age and wisdom. Thyra stopped. "High Seer Malix," she breathed. Ray raised an eyebrow. "Friend or executioner?" Malix's gaze was sharp. "I am here because your father has lost his way, Princess." Ray relaxed a little. "Not an executioner. Good start." Malix continued, "The Emperor's orders have divided the people. Many believe you were right to reject the suitors. Some believe you are committing treason." Ray sighed. "Love how those are basically the same thing." Thyra ignored him. "Do we have a way off this planet?" Malix nodded. "A ship awaits in the outer docking ring." But then his expression turned grim. "The Emperor has already sent the warlord after you." Ray's stomach dropped. Vakros. He barely survived that guy when he wasn't trying to kill him outright. And now Vakros had permission to end him permanently. The last flight off HFY. The docking ring was massive, with ships of all sizes resting on glowing platforms. It was normally a place of order and protocol. But now, it was a war zone. Guards stormed in from all sides. Alarm sirens blared. The Emperor wasn't just trying to stop them. He was sending a message. Thyra and Ray raced toward a sleek black starship near the far end of the platform. Malix followed, activating a holo key that lit up the ship's controls. "It's prepped for launch. Get inside, now." Ray was halfway up the ramp when a shadow loomed behind them. Vakros. The warlord stood at the entrance of the docking ring, towering in full battle armor. His red cybernetic eyes glowed with rage. "You cannot escape, Princess," he growled. His deep voice shook the walls. Ray groaned. "Why do we always stop to chat? Let's go." But Thyra didn't move. She turned to face Vakros. She wasn't running anymore. "I see you for what you are," she said coldly. "You wanted my hand, not for love, but for conquest." Vakros took a step forward. "I wanted to make you strong." "No," she whispered. "You wanted to make me yours." Ray saw it before anyone else did. Vakros lunged. Ray reacted without thinking. He grabbed a loose metal pipe from the ship's boarding ramp and swung with everything he had. The pipe collided with Vakros' helmet, cracking his visor. Vakros stumbled, but barely. He turned his furious gaze toward Ray. Ray gave an awkward grin. "You know, I should really stop picking fights I can't win." Vakros lunged again. Thyra raised her hands, summoning a blast of royal energy. But Vakros was faster. His massive arm struck Ray across the chest, sending him flying off the ramp and onto the hard metal ground. Pain exploded in Ray's ribs. His vision blurred. Vakros loomed over him, raising his blade for the final strike. And then, a thunderous explosion rocked the platform. A second ship, a rogue vessel, descended from above, blasting Zyphorian forces with plasma cannons. Vakros turned in shock. "What?" Thyra grabbed Ray's arm and hauled him up. Ray coughed. Who the hell is that?" A voice boomed from the rogue ship's comms. "Need a ride?" Ray's eyes widened. He recognized that voice. Captain Juno Hale. A smuggler, a rogue, a legend among outlaws, and one of Ray's old friends. Thyra didn't ask questions. She dragged Ray onto their original ship, and within seconds, both ships blasted off the docking ring, tearing through HFY's defenses. The chase begins. The Emperor's war fleet launched in pursuit. Ray barely strapped himself into the co-pilot seat before alarms began screaming. "Thyra, we've got about 1,000 warships locking onto us." Thyra's fingers danced across the controls. "Then let's hope you're as good at flying as you are at sarcasm." Ray grinned. "Sweetheart, you have no idea." With enemy ships in hot pursuit, their stolen vessel blasted into deep space, weaving through a storm of laser fire. The Empire would not stop hunting them. But for the first time in his life, Ray wasn't just running for himself. He was running with someone. And maybe, just maybe, he wasn't running away anymore. The choice that changed a galaxy. Desperate escape. The black void of space stretched endlessly before them, filled with the distant glow of burning stars. But behind them, death was closing in. Ray Carter gripped the controls of the stolen Zyphorian starship, heart pounding as the Emperor's war fleet tore through hyperspace, chasing them across the system. The dashboard flashed red, alarms blaring. Shields at 20%. Xyra announced from the co-pilot's seat. Her face remained calm, but her hands moved quickly, adjusting the ship's power reserves. Ray winced as another blast of plasma rocked the hull. "Yeah, I can feel that, thanks." A familiar voice crackled over the comms. Captain Juno Hale, rogue smuggler, infamous outlaw, and one of the few people in the universe who owed Ray a favor. "You guys are really making me work for this rescue." Juno's voice came through with static. "I was expecting a casual getaway, not a damn fleet chasing us into the abyss." Ray grinned despite himself. "What, you didn't miss me?" Juno's laugh was short and sharp. "Miss you? Carter, you owe me 4 crates of Imperial-grade fuel and a bottle of Corvian whiskey." Xyra arched an eyebrow at Ray. "This is your friend." Ray shrugged. "In my defense, I didn't expect to be running for my life today." Juno's ship, the Iron Fang, darted in beside them, shields flickering as it took hits. "Listen, lovebirds, I've got an idea, but it's risky." Ray smirked. "Aren't all your ideas risky?" "Yeah. Well, this one might actually get us killed." The enemy fleet loomed behind them, moving in a deadly formation, and at its center, aboard the Imperial dreadnought, stood Emperor Zalafor, watching, waiting, and ready to end them both. The Emperor's wrath. On the bridge of the Zyphorian dreadnought, the Emperor stared at the tactical holomap with an expression of fury. "Fire the disruptor cannons," he ordered. His voice was calm, but his golden eyes burned. "Destroy their ship. Bring my daughter back." A Zyphorian officer hesitated. "Your Majesty, if we fire the disruptors now, there is a 40% chance the princess will be." The Emperor turned slowly. His gaze alone was enough to make the officer tremble. "There is a 100% chance that if she escapes, the Empire will never recover." He stepped forward, placing a hand on the command console. "My daughter is lost," he muttered, mostly to himself. "She has chosen the path of ruin. If she will not uphold tradition." His jaw tightened. "Then she will burn with the human." A fleet-wide signal was sent. "Prepare the Eclipse cannon." The bridge fell into a stunned silence. The Eclipse cannon, a superweapon capable of tearing through planetary defenses, obliterating entire civilizations. One of the officers finally found his voice. "Your Majesty, using the cannon on a single target is..." The Emperor's golden eyes flared. "Do it. A plan of madness." Ray was still arguing with Juno when Xyra's expression darkened. "Something's wrong," she said. Ray gave her a look. "Yeah, you mean aside from the Death Fleet behind us?" Xyra's fingers hovered over the control panel. "No, my father wouldn't waste time chasing us if he could end it with one strike." Juno's ship veered away, and her voice crackled over the comms. "Guys, I don't want to alarm you, but they're charging a super weapon." Ray blinked. "Okay, definitely alarmed." Xyra's face went pale. The Eclipse cannon. Ray had never heard of it, but judging by Xyra's sudden urgency, he didn't need to. "How do we stop it?" Ray asked. Xyra's eyes flickered with determination. "We don't." She turned to Juno. "How much time do we have before it fires?" Juno's response was grim. 2 minutes, maybe less. Ray tightened his grip on the controls. He had 2 minutes to make a choice. And there was only one option. "Juno, take your ship and get out of here," Ray said. "What?" Juno snapped. I didn't come all this way just to. I'm not asking, Ray interrupted. His voice was firm, final. Juno was silent for a moment. Then she sighed. Damn it, Carter. Her ship veered away, disappearing into hyperspace. Ray turned to Zyra. We're not running, he said. Zyra's silver eyes met his. Then what's the plan? Ray took a deep breath. We fly straight at the cannon. Zyra didn't flinch. That's suicide. Ray gave a reckless grin. Only if we fail. The choice that changed a galaxy. The Eclipse cannon finished charging. The Zyphorian fleet parted, making way for the shot. On the bridge of the dreadnought, the Emperor watched as his daughter's stolen ship turned to face them. He expected them to run, to flee, to make a desperate escape attempt. But they didn't. They were coming straight for him. What are they doing? An officer whispered. The Emperor clenched his fist. End them. The Eclipse cannon fired. A massive pulse of golden energy shot forward, a beam so powerful it could rip through planets. And Ray Carter, a human with no armor, no royal blood, no army, steered directly into its path. But at the last second, Zyra extended her hands, and something impossible happened. The Eclipse cannon's energy split apart, its raw power bending around them in a massive shockwave. Ray's breath caught. Zyra was controlling it. Her entire body glowed, her silver eyes blazing with power as she redirected the energy, sending it back toward the fleet. The Eclipse cannon exploded, tearing through the dreadnought's defenses. The Emperor barely had time to react before the bridge shattered around him. A new dawn. The Zyphorian fleet collapsed. Without their flagship, without their Emperor, the Empire fell into chaos. Ray and Sarah drifted through space, the wreckage of the battle floating around them. For the first time, there was silence. Ray turned to Zyra, still dazed. You just. Sarah exhaled, her energy fading. I just ended an empire. Ray gave a tired grin. Yeah, that was kinda hot. Zyra rolled her eyes, but there was a small smile on her lips. And as their ship finally disappeared into hyperspace, leaving the ruined empire behind, Ray knew one thing for certain. He wasn't just an ordinary human anymore. He was the man who changed a galaxy.